And we have, in the meantime, Diane joining us. Alina is also here. And I think, so Diane, you're looking at a very diverse group, which has probably one, so everyone has probably one thing in common, and that's terrible eating habits. So I expect
mine
that
aren't so great either these days, so.
I expect that this is going to be a session about yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for making this happen. I know how stressful a day before the event is, and then not only showing up, but bringing two friends into this conversation is just amazing. I should come over and give you an award for this. But what I'm doing,
just dinner.
I'm giving you the virtual stage for now for this, and I'm really looking forward.
Okay, hi everybody, welcome. Thank you for having me. We're going to keep this really casual. As Nikki said, this is very last minute. We're having a conversation. Alina, Wenjay, and I were supposed to have dinner together right before the pandemic hit. So this is our virtual, we're not having dinner, but we're sharing what we would be probably talking about with you guys. So why don't we start, Wenjay? I see you typing. Why don't you introduce, we're going to introduce ourselves. Why don't you are you out delivering? You've got your mask.
No, I'm in the warehouse.
So do you want to just tell everyone sort of who you are, your company, how you got into it, a little background?
Sure. So I'm Wenjay, based in Brooklyn, New York. I own a company called Roots NYC. We've been around for 9 years, since 2011. And we are a subscription-based farmers market where we work with farmers within 2 hours of New York City. Veggies, meat, eggs, cheese, you name it, all responsibly grown. And we deliver it right to people's doorsteps. So right now we're delivering to over 1,000 apartments a week. And we have a couple pop-up locations that people can pick up their food also. That's pretty much a good summary of what I do. And right now I'm in the warehouse just prepping for the week, organizing all of our days, produce and meat, that kind of stuff.
So just so everyone knows, people in the food space tend to assume that people know what goes on in the food space. So what Wenjay has basically is called a CSA, it's Community Supported Agriculture. People get a subscription from her. They pay in advance so the farmer can have the funds to plant the food. She then organizes the food, delivers it. She also gives, correct me if I'm wrong, you give the opportunity for people to also buy added on products, correct, Wenjay?
Yeah, so we have subscriptions where people subscribe, like Diane was saying, to say vegetables, and then they can also add on things. We have like an online market, which is, you know, you can, if you want to add on freshly ground all-purpose flour or pork chops, you can add those on to your order. And the great thing is that it's really encouraging people to commit to a healthy food lifestyle. So it's not just, oh, I'm going to go to the farmer's market this 1 week because I have time. It's saying every week, because I've subscribed ahead of time, I have the food I ordered. I already paid for it. I'm going to cook more often because I have the groceries in my fridge. We also do things like, you know, recipes and, you know, we have lots of different like cooking tutorials and storage tips. Because it's really important, not just if you're going to be providing seasonal produce that, you know, you're introducing people to a lot of different new varieties. It's important to give them the skill set to know how to cook it. And obviously, if we're talking about food as medicine, as I'm sure Alina will talk about later, that diversifying your nutrients, diversifying the food that goes into your body is, it's better for your immune system. So which is why eating seasonal is really important, especially right now.
And when CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, started, it was at the beginning of the whole local food movement, which would you say was like 10, 15 years ago? It started to get really big. I did it way back then, and you had to get a box. Like you had to get, and you would get so much kale. Like I'll eat kale, but there's only so much. So what has happened is companies like Wenjay's has now adapted where people can also do add-ons. So one thing about food in the food space is that people have had to adapt pretty quickly in the market in order to stay relevant and viable. So Alina, say hello, introduce yourself. And are you speaking AeroFarms? Alina, the dietitian, both? So let us sort of know who you are today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Diane, for having me. And hi, Wenjay. Wenjay and Diane are good friends of mine, so it's always a pleasure to share the Zoom screen with them. So my background actually is in so I'll introduce myself first, as I'm the marketing director at a company called AeroFarms. Do you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. So AeroFarms, I've been at AeroFarms for over 5 years now, since it was about 12 people, and now we're over 170 people, and it's one of the largest vertical farms in the world. So you guys can Google it, AeroFarms, and you can kind of see a visual of it. And my role there is really on the product sales, marketing, and product development innovation side. But my background is actually in the sustainable food space, restaurants in New York City, and primarily nutrition. I studied nutritional biochemistry in college, and I'm a clinical nutritionist. So my interest in all of this really comes from the perspective of public health and the role that our food system has on the well-being of people. And so that's actually why I work in food, because my intention was to go into medicine, and then I saw how broken our medical system was and how disconnected the medical system is from the food system in this country. And I thought, there's no way that I can help people get better if most of our chronic diseases are rooted in food. And you can help people get better unless you go to the source, which is the food system itself. So that's where the space that I've been in for a while. But I will say, with all of your introductions, it's been fascinating. Peter specifically, and Rasul, because on the side, one of my passion projects, I actually have a company called We Are Supernatural that deals with bringing community together around personal development, personal growth, events, self-development. We call it a curiosity incubator. So, and Evelina, your work is really interesting too. So it's all super cool.
Thanks, Alina. And I'm Diane Hatz. I have been a healthy food advocate for over 20 years now. I fell into the food movement when nobody knew there was a food movement. I used to work many years ago in the music industry, had to get out. Started out by working with farmers around the United States, trying to shut down factory farms before people knew what factory farms were. Ended up doing all this work. I was one of the people that helped bring organic food into supermarkets and to make the term sustainable and organic sort of household terms. So this is 20 plus years ago. I put on TEDx Manhattan, changing the way we eat. So I had a TEDx that was focused specifically on food and farming. I have a nonprofit called Change Food. I have recently, you were just speaking with Laura Stein, the founder of BOMA Global. I just signed on to be a partner with BOMA Grow USA. So I am doing a national BOMA event on food and farming. I also have a consultancy company called Whole Healthy Group. So basically, I don't know, I do too much basically. So I want to start off, Wenjay and Alina. Our topic is future of food. So I'd love to know, and just so you all know, we haven't spoken with each other since the pandemic happened. Like all of us have been. So I'm just as interested in hearing their answers. So this is all unscripted, but do you guys feel that like the future of food is now simply changed? Like what was your definition before and how do you look at it now?
It's so hard because everything changes like literally every day. I think in some ways people have definitely been celebrating local food and cooking a lot more right now. I don't know if that's a permanent change. I don't think it is. I think people will definitely because it's hard. Like it's not that it's harder, it just takes more time. And I don't think, at least people in New York City, I can't speak for other places, but I think in New York City, like it's so easy to get so busy with work and restaurants and bars and everything else, like concerts, all that stuff, that I don't think that lifestyle change that's happening now will be permanent. I think it will definitely have more of an impact on people. I mean, we've been able to introduce, 1,000 and more people to what local food means, who have never really shopped local, which is actually incredible. It's only a small amount, you know, based on population of New York, but to actually convert people to say, I can't believe that food actually tastes this good is pretty incredible. So I think it definitely will have some level of an impact on people. I think we'll retain that same loyalty with a percentage of our customers, but I don't think every single person you see on Instagram making sourdough bread is going to be is going to keep that lifestyle forever. I think there's a lot of, I think more so beyond the consumer part is there's a lot of holes that are showing in their food system right now. People are finally obviously seeing the impacts of the bad working conditions of industrial agriculture. And there's other tiny holes the consumer never sees that for me, I consider the future of food for myself, meaning like a lot of these small farms and small businesses don't have the organization needed to actually scale. So say, and this is what happened now, a company, a small farm doubles in revenue and sales the next day. How do they handle it? Well, it's been really hard for a lot of farms logistically. So I think the future of food for me, I hope, is actually preparing these smaller farms and smaller businesses to internally be able to handle growth properly in a way that's easy for them. I know for us, we definitely had growing pains, not only with our own company, but also just, you know, we work with 20 or 30 different small family farms. And when everyone has different ways of organization and all those organizational skills are kind of left to the door now, it's been really hard, and it's been really hard to provide a service that's 100% guaranteed successful for the consumer. And that's obviously very important if we're introducing consumers to this new lifestyle, which is local food and small scale farming. We have to make sure that they're really happy with the product, is my idea for future food.
So I'm not sure if everyone knows this. So I hate to make any assumptions, but there's sort of two major aspects to the food system. One is your, I don't know, brand names in other countries, but your General Mills and your PepsiCo and your very large Unilever, your very large international conglomerate, overprocessed. We do it all for profit. And then this movement that we're part of. I mean, Alina, in some senses, you walk the line. AeroFarms is small, but it is actually a very big company. But it's nothing like a PepsiCo, like Pepsi or Coke or those companies. So when Jay and we work in the world of what I call the new food movement. We are small, decentralized, local. We work with small farmers. With what's just happened with COVID-19, there are people who are really hopeful and are working very hard to make a decentralized local food system the norm because of all the problems around the pandemic. Just so you guys understand, like that's sort of what Wenjay is coming from, a very localized system, and that what she's already seen is that the growth that companies have had overnight when these small companies has been very hard and challenging to already handle. So Alina, what did you think the future of food was, and what do you see it as now, and has it changed for you? Oh, are you on mute? I can't hear you.
Alina is not muted.
No, I still can't hear you.
Still can't hear me?
Now we can.
Now we can.
Now you can hear me? Okay, awesome. I mean, you know, before COVID, before everything happened, I think that, you know, Wenjay and I talked a lot about this. Wenjay is the kind of person who has been for years and years promoting the kind of food system that I've always dreamed would be the norm in this country, which is strong, local, regional, resilient food system where you have where farmers are actually caring for the land. You're growing a biodiversity of food you're eating seasonally. You know, you have the direct connection to the farmers, but it was really an uphill battle to get people to, while people are and were and increasingly interested in eating in this kind of way, for the most part, people choose what? Convenient, cheap, available where I shop, you know, what's the lowest common denominator for the most part. And you can't always blame them either. And so we're kind of living in this industrial food system world that I was really disappointed in, and it always felt like an uphill battle. What we're seeing with COVID-19 is really interesting. It's a bit of a breakdown of every kind of order. The way that I see it, you have all of these issues that are happening with large-scale farming operations, large-scale processing operations, what's happening with meat operations in the country, the meat shortages and the protein shortages that are taking place, the millions of euthanized.
Don't assume they know.
So
assume they know what's happening in the U.S. with processing. So just.
I'm trying to give a bit of a background. So basically what's happening now in the United States is that all of these very large-scale centralized food operations are experiencing a tremendous amount of difficulty, partially because of labor shortages, partially because of safety of the staff, safety of the workforce, the decreased demand, decreased demand, because so basically what's happening now is supermarkets, where most people are still shopping, supermarkets are seeing an increase in demand, but restaurants, corporate cafeterias, large catering, food service operations are down at basically zero. So a lot of these kind of like supply chain dynamics that are taking in the United States, you're seeing a lot of the holes and the blind spots. And
wait, Alina, can I just add something?
Of course.
Only because I've spoken to our meat farmers and our egg farmers a lot about this, because it's the supply chain. It's very hard, even with local food, to get what you want. So I ask our farmers a lot, like, what makes the difference between a small scale farm during COVID-19 versus industrial? And it's like Alina mentioned, there's a lot of things with like labor, but a couple of the largest meat production facilities that provide meat for like the majority of the country shut down, because when you are working in these conditions where people are shoulder to shoulder because they're punching out as much product as possible in the smallest amount of time, obviously if one person is sick, it's going to multiply that very quickly, especially when people are working very long hours, which means that they're tired and their immune systems are low already, right? You compare that to, say, our meat farmer on Long Island, very, very small staff. The slaughterhouses he worked with are very small. So you don't have the kind of work conditions that are going to like promote people getting sick. So it's not just, okay, so there's people getting sick and dying and shutting down factories, right? There's also the issue of, yes, institutions, large scale buying, like restaurants and bars have closed. And a lot of companies honestly don't even know how to pivot to do retail for customers. It's interesting. It's actually, so for example, like egg cartons in America are very, very hard to find. It's like hard to find. Egg farmers can't get egg cartons because so many of these larger egg farms that used to sell egg flats to hospitals or whatever are trying to pivot to retail. So they're learning how to, one, buy the packaging materials, which would be egg cartons, 2, learn how to pack these things, 3, learn how to market to consumers. So it's interesting because that's the reason why so much food is going to waste, is that it's very hard to change your business model overnight. Small businesses and small farms can do it because they are a very small workforce and they're used to adapting to different things every day. But when you have a large institution with so many things in place, transitioning is very difficult, which is why a lot of people are having to waste their food that they're farming and growing because they don't know how to pivot their business model so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really, really
But that's also brought up something that I've started seeing pop up more is because of this, because the larger companies are having so many problems pivoting, is that people are predicting that there will be a much more localized, decentralized food system. Do you guys think that can be a reality? Because we're dealing, I don't know about in Austria and the Netherlands, and I just say I spent some time in Copenhagen last year. It's a bit different. Like, I'm working on a program. I just heard that Copenhagen passed a law. You're planting fruit trees in public spaces, which is my new thing that I'm pushing out globally. They're not quite here yet. So Do you think with the powers that be in the industrialized food system that a decentralized food system will work? I'm very hopeful personally, but what do you both think?
I'm a pretty pessimist optimist, so.
I know. Alina, what do you think? I cut you off, so what
Diane,
do you think?
it's because I work every day direct with consumers, you know? Like, I know how hard it is. It took a pandemic to get people to open their eyes to the fact that there's even local farms. A lot of people still don't even know there's farms around New York, you know?
Right, but they do now. That's what we're going to focus on, because it always takes a crisis for people to change. So we're in crisis. So we need to use it now to change.
Dark night of the soul in the food system.
Can I ask?
Nikki?
Thank you. Can I ask something?
Of course. Anybody, any of you, please, if you want questions.
How much do you think this is happening because of the fact that there's no choice, or very limited choice? I was cooking at home and I loved it, and I've been cooking at home years ago, and then I started eating out, and then it turned out to be that I'm home 5 days a year and the rest is eating out. And now, of course, with the limited choice, I cooked at home and I had a great time. But then when the restrictions were withdrawn, the first thing that opened up in that realm was drive-in McDonald's, which is basically the opposite of healthy eating, right?
Nikki, you did not go to a drive-through McDonald's, did you?
No, it's not the point. The point is that everyone had.
You did.
The point is everyone had the same limited choice, right? So they were eating healthy food because it's from the grocery store, it's veggies, self-cooked, all the good stuff. But the moment McDonald's opened up, there were like 30 minutes, I'm assuming because I did not go, 30 minutes wait at the drive-through. And I'm wondering, how much is it related to the fact that the choice is limited and it's going to bounce back to where it's been before, or how much can we actually design intrinsic motivation to turn that into the new normal?
I'm jumping in on this first, you guys. So I think it's going to depend on people like us, the three of us, and what we're doing. My event tomorrow, which you're all invited to register for, I'll make sure Nikki sends you the link. It's about health and immunity. Now, Alina is also a dietitian. So yes, people might go back to McDonald's, but the people who are most affected by COVID, I've read research that 60 to 70% of the population are going to get it. So we all should just accept the fact we're going to get it. A lot of us might have already had it. It's going to mutate. We're going to get it again. The one thing you can do is build your immune system, because the effects of COVID-19 will be less. And in order to build your immune system, you have to eat better. McDonald's is not going to build your immune system. I don't care what they're going to tell you. That is not real food. So local farms, eating healthy, that is going to. My hope is that because people are all baking bread and that people are all actually getting back to a stove, they're going to get back into the habit. So maybe they'll only get takeout once a week. I'm not saying we're all going to be Puritans. Look, if I told you how many brownies and cakes and bread I've been eating over the past 3 months because I'm stress eating, there's reality to it all. But I am an optimist at heart. I couldn't do what I do. I believe this is a crucial time for our movement to take a stand. And I think health is the way we're going to do it, because everyone has to understand that they're going to get this and they can do something about it.
But Diane, I think that there is a small percentage of people who have the personality trait that when they want to make a change in their life, they will make every effort to do it, which is, I'm sure everyone who's on this call, right? We work towards our passion and we work our asses off for it. I think in order to make a larger shift in people's lifestyles after once the most convenient thing is going out to eat and getting takeout, the best way to change that lifestyle is having the system help change those lifestyles. Meaning, like, how can healthcare institutions promote healthy eating? How can the government be, I don't know, subsidizing local farms? Or there just needs to be a bigger support system for people to make that choice. Otherwise, it's still too hard for people in this modern day.
Right. What I'm talking about is the state of California. I don't know why they contacted me, but I've just joined a working group for the state of California. They have small farmers on it. They have people from all different parts of the food space. They have the mayor Stockton, who's doing some really great innovative work in his area. And they're saying, hey, how should we build this food system? I just got on a call with New York City looking at how can we get food to people and how can we change the food system. I don't know if this has happened again where people have reached out to people. I don't want to say I'm at a low level, but I'm not a wonky politician. Like, I'm an advocate. I really go out to affect and create change. And the politicians and the policymakers are actually talking to people like me now. So I'm not going to give up my optimism.
Okay, well then I'm optimistic. Now
I'm
hearing
gonna
that
make
the
you an
government,
optimist.
no, now that actually hearing the government actually gives a shit about people and the food and the farms around their cities, then
State
yeah,
government. I don't know about the federal government.
that's not even gonna be possible. But at
I
least
have
on a
to-
city
I think
level.
Alina's dying to say something. She's getting right into the computer
No,
screen.
I've never spoken so little in my life. Actually, I'm really enjoying it. I'm having like a very like internal quarantine. It's fantastic. No, go for it. I was just gonna share, like, I am very hopeful that after this there will be some significant changes that take place both at the consumer behavioral level and also sort of at the structural level of the food system, because we do see how many gaps we have. For AeroFarms, for us, I mean, we grow leafy greens, primarily in microgreens in Newark, and we distribute them locally, which maybe for Europe sounds like, duh, like that's food, right? But in the US, from a leafy green standpoint, just to give you a sense, 90% of them grow in the Salinas Valley or in Yuma, Arizona, and then they get trucked all over the country. So where most of our food, it's comes from somewhere, it's aggregated, and then it's distributed. So the concept of a local food system, especially around a metropolitan area like a city, is a big deal. That's what Wenjay is doing. What I'm really hoping is that this pandemic has incentivized people, right, to sign up for more CSAs, to go to more farmers markets, if only because they feel like it's a safer option for them, because it's delivered to their home. Their incentive might be it's more safe, and I'm supporting a local business, and I'm feeling like that's my responsibility right now. But hopefully for the long term, what they'll see is they're really contributing to something much, much bigger than that, which is the support of a connected local food system that's actually doing better for me and for my health. So I'm really hopeful, but I do agree with Wenjay that it really is going to take a concerted amount of effort, funding, policy to be able to sustain that for the long term. Otherwise, people like their habits. When the pandemic started, what were people eating? What was being sold out at the supermarket? Cereal.
Beans.
Yeah.
Beans are good for
like
you.
comfort food.
Marcus has a question. Yes, it did, because it's a pandemic. It's a pandemic. We're not mental health experts, but the mental health after effects of this are going to be absolutely atrocious. So I'm not faulting anyone for eating junk food right now. I do think this is a great opportunity for change, though. But Marcus, do you want to ask a question?
Marcus, give me a second. I would like to be efficient here, if that's cool for you. And also, Alina said that she is not used to talking so little. I would like to break you in 3 rooms. So each of you guys will be with another 2 people from the group for questions and intimate conversations for 5 minutes. So I'm sending you all into these breakout rooms, and I would like to just briefly make a cut of your conversation 5 minutes, and then you keep it coming. But I think there are so many burning questions in the group, and it's more efficient that we have to split out. If that's cool for you, Diane, is it working?
I hope I get good people.
You get great people. See you in 5 minutes. So back to Diane and Alina and Wenjay. What were like, give us all a minute of the last 5 minutes. What were good questions? What did the questions tell you that you might not have focused on before? Share a little from the
conversation. Unfortunately, Martin did not get to speak. So Marcus we talked about school food, and I tried to give some suggestions. I mean, the bottom line is this is a bottom up. With the pandemic, what's going on, if you want a decentralized local food system, if you want to change the corporate players, you have to go bottom up. I started a group called East Village Neighbors. I live in the East Village of Manhattan. When the pandemic hit, this is separate from anything I'm doing. I started gathering volunteers because it's an immigrant community, there's a lot of older people, there's public housing. I have over 150 volunteers who buy groceries, deliver groceries to people. We've raised some money. We will pay for groceries for people. We've now connected with the city. So over the course of 2 months, what started as me and 2 people posting flyers to just try to help the elderly and the sick in the area has turned into what's becoming a national coalition of groups like mine. And it wasn't just me, people independently like me around the country sprung up and said, how can I help my neighbor? And then now we're all starting to say, hey, how are you doing this? How's it working? Because there's big issues with food banks. I mean, there's so many issues. And people are saying, how can we solve it? And they're talking to the people at the bottom, which didn't happen before. So that's what I was trying to tell Marcus in a school food kind of way.
NJ, how was your session?
It was good, but we didn't talk about this specific topic. We spoke about someone's coaching, new business about coaching for nutritious eating.
Okay, interesting. Alina.
I'll let Peter answer.
We didn't have enough time, but we were talking about the difficulties about having like centralized production facilities. I mean, doing everything in one place, it's kind of like really fragile and not a sustainable way of producing food and distributing food. So we were talking about that. So and I just mentioned when we were cut off that I spent 6 months in New York last year, and as part of Urban X in Brooklyn, in Greenpoint. And,
I'm part of FedEx.
Okay.
I'm part of FedEx. So I was trying to get one of them to be on the call, but they're having board meetings today.
Okay, yeah, but I really loved being there, but I was really surprised about. I mean, New York State has a lot of farmland, I guess, and a lot of forests. I mean, U.S. in general is one big farmland. So it's kind of surprising that at least from a European perspective, that it's not more distributed. That you have like local suppliers for food supplies.
Thank you for the overview. It's a hard decision not to join the breakout areas, but I've learned from people who do this a lot that it's important that the host doesn't join. It's like the parents are out of house so the children can have a real conversation. I hope this doesn't come across weird, but I always envy you because I have no idea what's going on. Even with the recording, and the session is recorded, and I'm going to share an edit of the session, even there's no recording of the breakouts. I thought I can at least revisit, but no way, it's a black box. I have no idea what happened there. So also next time you're in the black box and the host is not there, you can take it for granted. He has no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, we should talk about the future. So what I have heard so far, that questions are very, very old. So I have worked, I think 10 years ago in a project where we started a network for food corporations, and the questions was the same then. It's 10 years ago, it's 20 years ago, it's still the same questions. So, but I don't hear now and I don't see any approach. So how could the future really be?
Or maybe what happened in the past 10 years that we didn't even realize.
No,
So the future, the thing about the future is it's going to depend on your perspective, just like who you back politically. Like here in the States, people live in completely different realities. So regenerative food farming systems are the only way I see us to go. We're all focused on the pandemic right now, but we've got climate change, and climate change is right on our heels. It is coming, and it's coming fast. So a regenerative food system, yes, it's going to take more labor, but we are going to be, and again, not sure about other countries, the US is going to be in the worst depression. Probably it's going to be worse than the Great Depression here that we're heading into. So people are going to need work. Manual labor, that'll be good for folks. So it's an opportunity for people to get out and to do more regenerative farming. Regenerative farming will build soil. Soil will build soil health. We don't get enough nutrients in food now because the soil's been stripped. Capitalism, and this is a bigger issue, capitalism has gotten out of control, basically. and it's got to be people coming together. So I don't think the UN is going to solve this problem, even though I'm working toward the Sustainable Development Goals and I'm on these coalitions, whatever. It's people like us that are going to make the change. So that to me is the future of food. I think that the Impossible Burger is a scam, like a lot of stuff. But this woman, the chef at my event tomorrow, has the best vegan burger in the state, maybe the world, but it's 5 vegetables. It's as least processed as possible. So we need investment in regenerative farming. The biggest problem with regenerative farming is transitioning to regenerative. It can take 7 years and it can cost a lot of money, but that is putting back more than you took out. So anyway, I'll stop because I could go on for hours. I can go to the soapbox and I'll go on for hours. I mean, what do you guys? I just think the future of food is not big box. It's not overprocessed. We're all dying. We're all dying. And the pandemic will help because people are dying literally now because they're dying fast instead of over 40 years because of the diet. But what do you guys think? Alina, Wenjay. I know, I'm sorry, I got off.
A lot of dying right there.
I completely agree with you about the concept of, not the concept of, but the impending impacts of climate change on our food system. We haven't felt it as much. We felt the droughts, we felt the difficult weather patterns around the country and around the world, but it really hasn't hit the West quite yet. And in the coming decades, it's going to be even more of a problem. And I think when it comes to survival and when it comes to food, we all need to eat, we all need clean air, and we need clean drinking water. So we won't have a choice. So that's why, I started working in food technology and vertical farming some time ago and got a lot of kind of pushback from a lot of my friends who are kind of in the agriculture space, regenerative agriculture space, but I think we need a variety of technologies. We need both regenerative agriculture, we need vertical farming, we need every single possible way that we can create, that we can grow food with minimal resources and minimal impact on our environment, because our population is only growing. And it's going to get more and more complex over the years. And I don't even think we can anticipate what it's going to look like. But shit is going to start hitting the fan for sure. And this pandemic is just exposing a small taste of what that might be like.
Another thing that's really important to me, because I'm a mentor at FoodX, so I'm a mentor at a food accelerator, and the VCs I've met, they're all lovely, and the investors I've met, but people have to stop looking at money as a god. And this is a broader issue, but like, if you really want to do something, if you have anything to do with investing and venture capitalism, don't look at just getting your 20%. Look at a company that's going to be regenerative. Look at a company that's going to give back. Look at a company that's hiring, that is being founded with people who are from that area. 3 white guys who went to like Yale were trying to start a company in Brownsville, which is a very poor part of Brooklyn. And I'm like, I'm not voting them in because they're coming in to make money to sell to people in a very poor area. No. And some VC people are just looking still at the bottom line. I think we need more B Corps. So I think people need to really start getting behind being a B Corp. It's a triple bottom line. And there was some big thing where these companies signed were triple bottom line. Customers have to hold them accountable so that they walk their talk. And I'm done. As you guys can tell, I'm done with this. I'm done with the bullshit. I'm done with the talking. Now's the time. Wenjay, I'll shut up.
I love hearing you talk about regenerative agriculture as I'm placing an order for meat right now. I obviously both of what you guys said is valid. I'm obviously a huge supporter of regenerative agriculture. What's up now?
There's no question.
Hold on a second.
107 portions or pounds?
Portions. The bags.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You should mute.
Well, sorry.
The farmer does her work. She's working 24/7. Food isn't easy. You got to get the food to the people.
Yeah, so I'm obviously a huge supporter of regenerative agriculture, soil health, and the problem is we've known that how impactful healthy soil can be on our environment since the 60s, and still this information has not been out and told to the public. We've known that the nutrients in our vegetables have declined due to industrial agriculture. We've known this since the 60s also, and this information still has not been told to the public. So there needs to be a better platform for conveying this information. There needs to be a way to limit greenwashing, which is really just taking something like the label organic and bigger, like, and companies making money off of saying that they're all natural or organic or eco-friendly when they're not actually. So there need to be ways to limit that. And I would say, as someone who sources things very strictly with like locality and sustainability, I have appreciations for also hydroponic and aeroponic farms, because the seasonality in New York is probably pretty similar to Copenhagen, and France also, where in the springtime, as I'm sure you guys have noticed, there's nothing grows. So now that a lot of local farms have boosted their sales with direct to consumer products, we're at a point where, like, I do have a fear that we won't have food for our consumers until the new summer harvest is ready. And we are relying heavily on hydroponic farms to grow some things for us. So I definitely think that there needs to be a balance of the hydroponic farms and be growing more in the wintertime and springtime, and really helping balance the seasonality of soil-based farms, but also having people, I mean, I'll talk about soil health all day long and the importance of it, so I think more people should know about that. But you have to find fun ways to do it for the consumer, because they're not gonna, this conversation is very niche. And like Diane said one time, actually at a panel that I was on, it's like, let's stop saying the same things to people that know this information, right? We all believe in local food. So how are ways that you actually reach people that maybe aren't aware of this and maybe need to be converted? That's the most important people we need to talk to.
And that's what I'm working on. Okay, there's a little discussion on chat about printed food. I saw printed steak and printed strawberries. Now you just hit, if this is 3D printing of food, you just hit my big pet peeve. I have a talk that's online from Seeds and Chips about it.
Sorry, I gotta go.
You mash up all the ingredients to put it in a thing to make a food when you're taking the food to mash it up to put it in the machine to make the food? Anybody can comment on that? Martin, were you joking or serious? Because somebody else said they had tried 3D printed strawberries.
Well, I don't know about 3D printed food specifically, but it's funny because I'm a nutritionist, so my core belief is in the power of fresh food that grows in soil on people's health, but I'm fascinated by technology, and I think technology is inevitable, and it's just about how do we develop and deploy technologies responsibly. So I actually had a spirulina shake this morning that was grown in a giant vat in the Brooklyn Navy Yard by my friends. And I work in a soilless, sunless, vertical farm. And I love the idea of 3D printed food. I think it's all fascinating.
No!
I love the idea. I don't think it's going to be.
I don't think
let me explain. I don't think it's going to replace food. I don't think it's going to replace real food. I think that as a concept, I'm pro developing absolutely all technologies, as long as we deploy them responsibly, and as long as we're not replacing initiatives that really need to be forwarded and focused.
Peter wants to say something.
Yeah, I just want to mention an experience I had at the Future Fest in London a few years ago, where I got 3D printed chocolate. And the really interesting thing about that was that it's kind of like, is it called molecular gastronomy and 3D printing. So they had actually created a piece of chocolate that had the same, what do you call it, like amount of flavor as like a solid piece of chocolate. But the thing was, they used half the amount of chocolate beans to create the same experience. So you saved some chocolate beans and you weren't getting fat, at least not that fat. And I think it's interesting to see, would that be possible to do with other types of food?
Yeah, and please, everyone, I'm not totally against technology. I am so pro technology. I just see people going for the shiny ring. So 3D printed ravioli was my big pet peeve. Why don't you just make ravioli? Why do you need a 3D printer to make your ravioli? I'm sorry. Now, if you're doing chocolate, it's cutting down, you're saving ingredients, you're saving resources, the same nutrient quality Yes, we need robots to pick apples, and Google is, in the process. They're in test now with Google. I think that is totally necessary. When you get to GMO, you get to CRISPR, you get stuff like that. I do not believe, of all the stuff I've read, it has not been tested properly. So yes, we need it, but we need it, Alina, as you said, we need it responsibly. I think aero farms is absolutely necessary. I am regenerative soil #1, but yes, vertical farming is necessary. Hydroponics is #2 for me. It's still not #1, but it's still necessary. Anything over junk food. And listen, junk food, it's an addiction. You can't just get off junk food and go, oh, I'm going to eat a whole foods diet. That's a whole nother conversation that we have to have. But I think the point is to have the conversations and to not just stop at the conversation.
Totally. No, and just to close before we all hop off, it's the same conversation as taking care of our health, right? We can't stop developing pharmaceutical drugs. We can't stop trying to cure diseases using technology, but the basis of all health is in food and lifestyle, right? You cannot, you need a great surgeon to be able to sew your arm back on, but it doesn't take away the necessity and the importance of healthy food grown in a healthy environment, prepared thoughtfully and eaten, in a healthful way. Nothing replaces that. So I just think it's that metaphor, I think, applies to this conversation too. You need a healthy base. Then the technology, the shiny shit, that's the icing on the cake, but that's not the cake.
I heard someone even saying that if you eat junk food, there is no way you'd love your children.
What?
Well,
these are my only children, so.
Look after yourself, and then you walk the talk, and there's so much into this. It's a quite radical saying, but I get the point.
So it's 1 o'clock. I'm anal about time. So Nikki, what do we do? Wenjie had to go. She said she's sorry, but she was literally in a warehouse doing food distribution, which is why she had the map and everything.
Diane, thank you so much for setting this up. I've put into the chat, and I'm going to also put it into the follow-up email with you guys, the invitation to tomorrow's conference of Diane. I don't want to abuse your time over capacity. If you have questions, I would love to collect them and send them in one email so Diane doesn't have 80 emails in her inbox with one single question.
Thank you.
I think that's an efficient way of dealing with it. I just love this. I felt like you've just invented a new format for a conversation. That's really nice. Kind of 2-3 people having a conversation and listen. I really, really enjoyed this. That was wonderful. There is a recording. I'm going to share this recording with the world, but also with you, of course.
I'm sorry for cursing. I have to go, everyone. But it was so nice to be with you all. Thank you, Diane. I'll see you tomorrow. And thank you, Nikki, and thank you, everyone. Email me anytime. You know where I am.
Thank you. You're all a wonderful group. Thank you so much for letting me be part of it.